Hey there gamers, welcome back to the channel. Today we're bringing you another exciting Napoleonic wargaming battle report. We'll be diving into a clash between the French and British forces. It's not a historical, it's one we kind of made up on the fly, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. So grab your dice, sit back and let's jump into the action. And if you haven't already, do please like and subscribe so you don't miss out any future uploads. So starting off our armies, the French have one infantry brigade of line infantry, one light infantry regiment, one hussar regiment, two batteries of artillery. And they will be going up against the forces of the British, and the British forces are going to be under the command of Picton, and they've got one infantry brigade, two light infantry regiments formed as a brigade, and two cavalry regiments formed as a brigade. The battlefield itself has a road coming on from the east on the right hand side and a road coming up from the south. There's a bridge crossing the stream, which is the objective for both sides. We randomly rolled to see which board edges we would come in on, and the British luckily got the opportunity to come in from the eastern side, so they're very close to it, whilst the French are on the southern side, so it's going to be a bit more of an uphill battle for the French. So today's battle will be using the black powder rule sets, which we have modified reasonably heavily to give us what we feel is a slightly more realistic game, although we do enjoy black powder just on itself. Some of the things we've added in just give it a bit more flair. The objectives for this game, as I already alluded to, are for both sides to control the bridge in the centre by the end of turn 12. We're going for 15 turns total, so if one of us can hold it by turn 12, that's probably going to be the end of the game. We've also chucked in extra rules so commanders can declare additional objectives during the game. Those objectives must have a logical reason to be given, but if you achieve it, it will create a random event that occurs which could either affect you or your enemy, either in a positive or a negative way. So things like that are quite interesting that we've put in. Also, if say a commander is killed, those random events will happen also. Remember, in black powder, commanders can issue orders to move and attack, but it's the dice that will determine the success of the commands, adding an element of unpredictability to the battle. So for the initial deployment, as I said earlier, the British managed to come on the eastern side, which gives them quite a good strong start. They've only got a short distance till they get to the bridge, so they flung their cavalry and light infantry to the south just to try and screen them off, whilst their main line infantry and artillery are going to head towards the bridge to occupy it and gain that objective. The French, on the other hand, they've come on the southern border, so they're going to make a beeline using the infantry on the road to try and strike up as fast as they can, with their artillery supporting them and the cavalry out on their left, swinging around just to try and prevent the British from doing anything on that side. Now, both players are carefully considering their strategies at this stage, knowing that the first few moves can set the tone for the entire battle to come. With their banners flying and the instruments playing, the French won the initiative for turn 1, and they started advancing. So the infantry were heading straight for the village with their artillery in support, and the cavalry, as said, carried on their advance to the left, just scanning out, just in case the British came around that side, so they don't want their infantry getting caught by surprise, basically. The main objective, as we've already alluded to, is the bridge, so the French are trying to spread their forces so they can get up there. Unfortunately for the French, the river is not fordable, so they won't be able to cross over. For the British, on their movement phase, they decided they would advance straight towards the bridge with the line infantry and the artillery, whilst the light infantry and the cavalry would push south and west to try and cut off any French advances. From their position, they can see the French forming up slightly further down the road, so they know there's going to be a bit of a battle around the village shortly. And as the British advance across the fields, they can see the French just poking out in the west. But the bridge at this stage, the British haven't quite got to it, so it's still no one's objective. So turns 2 through 6 saw the battle start to develop in ways that we originally hadn't predicted. We thought that both sides were going to be steamrolling for the bridge, but then we found actually the battle started developing more around the village itself. which I guess stands for a reason. So the French in their turns just kept on the advance, moving troops into the forests just to lay down fire, and started inflicting casualties on the British. The British themselves started to move their light infantry into the village and the cornfields just to its side, whilst the Scots Greys moved around the outskirts of the town. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the British infantry and artillery did finally make it to the bridge, so it was now occupied. The French cavalry were holding their position, just trying to keep the British away. British light dragoons started to advance towards them, but nothing too much was happening. One of the interesting things that started to happen at this point is that the French commander decided he wasn't going to target the British infantry or cavalry, but he was going to directly engage the bridge with both of his artillery pieces. In the game we've given scenery different hit points, and so he just decided if he wasn't going to be able to get to it, he was going to destroy the bridge, which is quite an interesting way of doing it. And so he issued an order to claim the village rather than the bridge. So the fighting had really picked up by the end of turn 6, and they were both sides suffering pretty heavy casualties. The French hadn't managed to get into the village, but they were inflicting casualties on the British. The British were still holding on, so it was anyone's game still. Turns 7 through 9 really were the climax of the battle. It really reached its crescendo. The French, realising that they weren't going to be able to make their assault into the town successfully, decided that they would start to withdraw. But it was a slow tactical withdrawal where they were blasting away at the British for every step. The British infantry had finally made it down from the road, and so they were starting to get into position where they would soon be able to engage the French light infantry. The cavalry of both sides still hadn't quite met up, so it was quite interesting. It was a bit of a cat and mouse game from both perspectives. It was around the turn 7 that one of the commanders was killed, and with that there was a random event, and that basically meant that a light fog blew on from the north, and so the British artillery was firing at a negative to hit. So although it was able to put some shots down, it wasn't too good. Shortly after that, another commander was killed, and the negative that happened there was that one of the regiments, or the last regiment to move, I should say, would charge the nearest enemy unit. And so that was the light dragoons for the British, so they had to charge immediately into the nearest enemy unit, which was the French hussars. So we had quite a climactic, deadly battle there, which saw both units pretty well annihilate each other. On the southern board edge, the French 3rd Infantry Regiment had formed square, but it was a disorganised square. So the Scots Greys thought they had an opportunity to charge. They made it, hit the square, but in closing they took two batteries worth of canister and the closing fire from the square and were annihilated, unable to inflict any casualties, and so were destroyed. So right up to the last minute there was still action happening. Although the British had now occupied the village and the bridge, so they had control of the battlefield, their troops were still fighting in the woods. The French, who we thought had been defeated, sort of rallied, pushed forwards, and were blasting away at close range with the artillery and their infantry regiments, forcing the British infantry to withdraw. And the final shot of the game was an artillery piece that fired and killed Picton, just like in the movie. A shot to the head. But overall, it was a fantastic game. It was great warfare from both sides. Both armies behaved the way that we expected that they would. I think the rule alterations that we've put into place are making the game sort of feel like a historical battle should fight, basically. So I hope you have enjoyed the battle report as much as we did playing it. The Napoleonic era is so rich in history and makes for some fantastic wargaming experiences. So again, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our latest content. Also, do leave a comment below with your thoughts on this battle, and let me know what battles, scenarios, etc. you'd like us to do next. Anyway, until next time, keep your dice rolling and your armies marching.